Thanks for coming tonight. My name is John Phelan. I'm the Energy Services Senior Manager for Collins Utilities. And so my team does all the energy efficiency, conservation, distributed generation, demand response. We do stuff in green building and carbon accounting, a whole range of topics. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about a new program that we actually launched sort of quietly last summer a little bit, and its association with the Bloomberg Mayors Challenge. We are recording this tonight, as Pete mentioned, and so to facilitate that, I think we're going to try to limit the number of questions during the sort of presentation piece. We'll have plenty of time to go through any questions you have, and so kind of keep note of those, and we'll definitely get to them. So, brief show of hands. Anybody heard already of the EPIC loan program in Fort Collins? Okay, good number of hands. How about the Bloomberg Mayors Challenge? Anybody heard of that? Well, we're talking about both of those together. So the EPIC loan program was the outcome of our work with the Bloomberg Mayors Challenge. So what I'm going to talk about is some of the key principles behind what we were putting together for this EPIC loan program and why it is, we think, extraordinarily unique. A little bit of the history of how we got to where we are today. And we're going to dive into those principles in a little bit more detail, give you an update on the status and look ahead. And after we got through the Q&A, if we want to talk more about the rapid prototyping process we used as part of the Bloomberg process in learning how to do innovation in a different way in local government, we can get into that too. So the key principles of the EPIC loan program, this Venn diagram actually has the same, it has those 7 bullets, and you end up with a really nice picture when you do a Venn diagram with 7 things in it. But what we're doing and what's unique is the simultaneous solution and optimization for all of these things. And we'll go through these in more detail, but each one of these would be unique and powerful in its own right. Putting them all together is extraordinarily unique. So the first is we're looking really at the health connections between health and energy efficiency in housing and understanding the indoor air quality benefits that can come out of improving energy efficiency. Think of the envelope type of measures and air leakage. But and establishing a research program to document that in Fort Collins. We're looking at implementing energy efficiency at scale. We've had some great programs. We've done a lot of houses. But with the goals that we have, we need to do orders of magnitude more of them. So how are we going to get to that kind of scale? How are we going to address our generally underserved low and moderate income residents due to the rental split incentive? Split incentive is a common term where neither party, when you're a renter, neither party, neither the tenant or the owner really has a motivation to invest in energy efficiency. Because one party pays the bill, the other party controls the assets of the house, and that's a ubiquitous problem. An effective implementation of on-bill financing that we're using through the utility bill is another component. Doing this with other people's money is the leveraging the third-party capital part, which is essential to get to that scale piece. So we can't just keep growing our rebates and incentives from a utilities perspective. There's no way that can finance the level of investment that needs to happen. We're demonstrating public-private partnerships, and we're driving innovation in local government. So all of those things, all at the same time, is what we're talking about here tonight. So a little bit of history. Some folks in this room can talk about these initial steps. Back in 2010, Fort Collins established the Home Efficiency Program. It was our first foray as an electric utility getting into the business and programs of fixing up single-family homes, insulation, air sealing, windows, furnaces, et cetera, et cetera. In 2013, we established our first on-bill financing program. In 2014, we transitioned that home efficiency program to work at the Platte River Power Authority scale, now branded as Efficiency Works Home. So it's now the same program is delivered across Fort Collins, Loveland, Longmont, and Estes Park. In 2016, we did a pilot called Efficiency Works Neighborhoods that again sort of was a huge step in restructuring how we deliver those services and make it very easy and very streamlined for customers to make comprehensive upgrades. That pilot, actually we got a call, Kim DeVoe, who managed that program, got a call from a group in Manchester, England yesterday. So I certainly said, I think a field trip is in order to really explain the program to them, but it's gotten a lot of national and international feedback because of the results that came out of the Efficiency Works neighborhood pilot. Along came the Bloomberg Mayors Challenge, which started in 2017 with our mayor deciding that the topic that Fort Collins would submit to the Mayor's Challenge was the climate economy. And then a group of us got together and sort of put some meat around what does that mean for us. And it was really trying to figure out how to leverage the investment of third-party capital to drive the scale that we needed. And then we tied in the rental component and the health component. So in 2018, we established the EPIC program. We went through the Bloomberg Mayors Challenge, and we won. So we got $1 million from Bloomberg Philanthropies. That announcement was, thank you.
Don't spend it all in one place.
Or do spend more.
So we'll see how this works. This is a really short video that can explain in 2 minutes the Bloomberg Mayors Challenge. That might take me a lot longer if I went through the whole thing. Let's just, oh, now it works. Isn't that great?
The goal of the Bloomberg Philanthropies Mayors Challenge is to support the cities generating the most innovative solutions to the challenges all cities face and help spread those solutions to others. From public health and climate change to job creation and affordable housing, cities are driving progress on the issues that really matter to people in their everyday lives.
Lincoln aggressively competing for grants.
But I think it will also benefit your health and your wallet. We are developing a blueprint.
The aim is to prepare for heat the same way other places do for hurricanes.
Working on the Mayor's Challenge has been both really rewarding and inspiring.
Just knowing that I can have some input is a really great feeling.
We've actually been encouraged not to fail so much, but to see what we can learn from it and then try to make it better.
So why does Michael Bloomberg, former mayor of New York, billionaire, have something called the Mayor's Challenge? He's doing it because he recognized that the actual results of actions, the results we're going to need are going to come from local actions, not from international agreements, not from national leadership, maybe some at the state level. I mean, all those play a role, but that the local is where things really happen. At the same time, local governments are usually horrible at really innovating because they're inherently sort of conservative, not conservative in the political sense, but conservative in terms of taking risks, risk-averse organizations. So how do we take the ideas and principles of rapid prototyping that's been around in business for ages and apply that to how local governments interact with their residents and design new programs and services? So this is a slide that shows the 9 winning cities. The potential for impact on, they gave the 9 prizes partly because each project was worthy of the prize. The other is they want to infect all local governments and learn from these and spread it across to get a much bigger impact. So a lot of it is, we'll be talking about that sort of replicability and transferability piece. So apologies, there's a bunch of words on these slides. Next versions will be even better. But I want to go through those. I want to go through these principles in a little bit more detail. So the first, documenting the beneficial well-being and health outcomes through indoor air quality improvements from efficiency. There's a lot of emerging evidence on the linkage in the quality of housing, the quality of our indoor environments, and the health and quality of life of the people that live in those houses, all of us. And it's exacerbated and more pronounced in lower income, poor quality housing, both because of where those houses are, as well as the types of houses and the condition that they're in. And so one of the pieces that we're doing with $1 million is establishing a research program with Colorado State University, a professor there, to do measurements of indoor air quality before and after as we're going through the processes of upgrading these homes, to start to build the data set that can really demonstrate the linkage between the efficiency, air quality, and health. One of the most interesting things I learned from is Dr. Ellison Carter at CSU has done a lot of work in Asia and China in particular, is when the air quality is really bad, like it is in many areas in China, even if you clean it up by a huge amount, it doesn't make any difference because the health response is really flat on that part of the curve. When you get down to where air is cleaner, where we are, it's a really steep part of the curve. So if you have a small impact on the air quality, it can actually have a really big impact on health. One of the most exciting things I learned in the whole project. The second one, increasing energy efficiency at scale, really looking at two things. One is to increase the savings and the outcomes from individual projects. So when you touch a house on an energy efficiency project, you may not ever get back to that house for several decades, if you're talking about the envelope. So when you're there, you want to maximize that intervention when somebody's making that decision to do the work, you want to do as much as you possibly can. So more comprehensive projects. And then we need to scale by 2, 3, 4x, just even in Fort Collins, not to mention everywhere else. How do we do that while at the same time maintaining the quality of the work? There's been a long tension in the energy efficiency space and single-family housing between sort of a race to the bottom in terms of price point, and you end up with really poor quality work that then doesn't get the outcomes you want, and it's sort of a negative cycle. And yet everybody wants to get, obviously, the best deal. And so how do we sort of manage that quality and scale component? When it comes to the split incentive, this was one of the areas we did much of our prototyping and testing, that I'll talk a little bit more later what I mean by prototyping, to understand the motivations of renters, of property managers, of property owners. There's a whole range of different types of property managers and owners. There's people that own just a couple houses. They live here in Fort Collins. They're part of the community. There's the institutional investment sort of trusts that own hundreds of them. What are their values that can actually drive them to want to invest in these properties? So we found some really effective methods to engage those property owners, defining some values, improved performance for all parties, and then the streamlining and making it easy turned out to be one of the most powerful things for them. They'd be like, I would do this if it weren't such a hassle. And so reducing that hassle factor became very, very important. We look at on-bill financing. It sounds simple. Take a project and put a loan and amortize it and stick it on the utility bill. There's actually a lot of billing, finance, and legal questions that come about doing that. So one of the things we've done, now we had done this before with our pilot, so we had a head start on that. One of the partners we have in this is the Colorado Energy Office. They've actually pledged, in addition to the Bloomberg money, they gave us a $200,000 grant last year and a commitment for a low-interest loan of $1 million that hasn't happened yet. And what we're giving them in exchange for that is an on-bill financing in a box toolkit that can then be used by other utilities and they've pledged another $4 million for 4 other communities in Colorado who are willing to pick up the toolkit. Energy Office will come in with $1 million in low-interest loan financing to kickstart the capital for that program. They also have a partner working with us called EESI, the Energy and Environmental Studies Institute, that has a national footprint, and they're helping with this toolbox, so we'll have some leverage points nationally as well. Leveraging third-party capital is really, really important to the chief financial officer of the city that we're successful at this bullet right here. So we launched our initial on-bill financing program with money from Fort Collins utilities in the reserves of the utility. And that was a fine approach to start with, and we were very successful in ramping that program up, but it's not scalable. We can't keep loaning out money that's held in reserve for certain activities, rainy day fund, when we actually need that, as well as many other places may not be able to have that same access to that same sort of capital. And so the structure to identify and figure out ways where we can work with grants, market capital, nonprofit investments from program-related investments and things like that, and put it together into a capital stack that still is attractive for residents to take out these loans, is what we're really focused on right now. And when I get to the sort of where we're at, I'll give you an update on where we expect that to be headed. The last 2 key principles demonstrating public-private partnerships. This whole thing is based on other people coming to the table to play, whether that's capital providers, our trade allies on the implementation, our efficiency contractors. We've got partners that are doing loan administration. We've got Colorado State University with the research component. We've got local nonprofits. They're engaged in both the outreach to low and moderate income residents, as well as possibly with on the capital side. And then we've got the Colorado Energy Office involved as well. And then I've already talked a fair amount about the driving innovation in local government, but we are trying to change the way not just Fort Collins Utilities learns how to deliver programs that work right from the start, but teach that and explain how that works to other elements of our local government so that we can take that same principle and move it forward. And that's what Prototyping 101 is. So where we are today, the EPIC loan program is up and running. It's a little screenshot from the website there. At the same time, we've been sort of riding the brake on this because we don't have enough capital in place to really go market it big time. So the grant agreement from Bloomberg, we're got a signed version of that today. We've got the pending loan from the Colorado Energy Office, and we're in negotiations with 2 capital partners. One is a traditional bank with a local presence. I can't name names yet. And that came back with an attractive proposal for relatively short-term funds. And then we're working with a national group that is behind essentially the formation of green banks across the country. They've been very involved in some of the green banks in the New England area, New York and Connecticut. There's a green bank forming in Colorado. We're likely to be the first recipient and structure agreement to be made with the Colorado Green Bank, and this coalition of investment folks are sort of behind that green bank formation. That's what's kind of going on the loan and the capital side. Efficiency Works Homes, that program is up and running, ready to deliver the efficiency projects. We've got sort of what we call the streamline path, which is the easy button, where customers can choose to have a lot of the steps sort of done on their behalf by the program, from scheduling contractors, choosing contractors. It has some standardized pricing components to it, makes it super easy. Or they can go the traditional path and they can go out and get their own bids and do all the comparisons they want. And we still continue to do the quality assurance and have incentives for that. The research with Colorado State University is also just getting going. So we've identified some of the grad students that are going to be a part of this and what their roles might be. We'll be purchasing some of the monitoring equipment so we can scale that with the Bloomberg grant funds, and establishing the protocols for how we interact with both tenants and owners as they go through essentially they're accepting to be part of the study for the air quality components as they're also having the energy efficiency work done. I think I hit most of those things already, so. Just wanted to sort of emphasize one more time, it's the simultaneous solution of all of these that I find is really fascinating for me. I'm really proud of where we're at and where we're headed with this. You'll find lots of work if you look at any one of these topics in conferences and papers and things like that are trying to tackle these, but to put it all together into a comprehensive program for residents of Fort Collins is very exciting. So what are the opportunities for scaling and replicability? Where do we expect this to go? Some sort of natural points might be expanding to look at the Platte River Power Authority footprint. So Efficiency Works Homes is already providing services in Loveland, Longmont, and Estes Park. So that might be the next place we would look to replicate this. The Energy Office, again, there's $4 million waiting for the next 4 communities and utilities that are willing to step up and implement on-bill financing. They're willing to come in and pair with that. So that gives a starting point not only for all of the other partners we have, are also looking at where does this go next. So I can guarantee you the bankers we're talking about are excited about the work we could do in Fort Collins. They'd be much more excited if this could scale and replicate many times over, either here in Colorado or nationally. And Bloomberg Philanthropies, so the Bloomberg Mayors Challenge itself is a 3-year project. So the $1 million comes with a set of work. We're working with those other 9 cities, so we're part of a cohort. They're bringing in coaches to help us. They'll be working on where does this go next? Again, we got to make it successful and make it work in Fort Collins, but that's not just what they're interested in. They're interested in where do we go from here. Some of the partners that we have in, I think I've mentioned all of these, with the exception perhaps of the Impact Development Fund. They are our implementation partner doing the loan qualification, loan closing, loan origination processes, and they've been a great partner for us already. And there's space for more, so. So that was kind of fast. That was really, without any questions, I'm amazed how fast it was. So I'm going to pause here and turn it into more of a discussion and take questions. Thanks for letting us get through that for the recording purposes. And happy to fire away. So. Kurt? So a question about what's happening locally here with PACE, or Property Assessed Clean Energy. It's a financing mechanism essentially where you can do energy projects and have those finances through the property assessment, special assessment on the property taxes that stays with the building regardless of who is the owner of that building. So Larimer County opted in to the structure of PACE, which is a statewide initiative, in, I want to say, October or so of last year. I believe we keep hearing there's projects in the pipeline. I don't know of any that have come through that we've seen yet, that have been completed. And it's also only for commercial buildings. Could certainly apply, we think, in larger multifamily buildings. It could be a really effective tool. What this program is looking at is single family and duplexed townhome type of structures. So we think they're complementary to each other.
Can you tell us a little more about the split incentive problem? And you mentioned that you actually had some helpful tips for the homeowners, or
Yes, so I mean the split incentive is a well-known, decades-old identified problem for energy efficiency program implementers like that you simply don't generally see uptake in rental properties because generally speaking, the tenants carry the utility bill in their name, so they're paying the bill and would receive the savings from that. And while the owner is going to manage the asset of the home itself. And where we had success really was in understanding the pain points of property managers and property owners and tenants as well. So there was, in our prototyping, we developed concepts and put them in front of low and moderate income residents. We thought that I'm going to get specifically to split incentive in a moment here. We thought that the concept of health and energy efficiency is a little bit abstract, that people might not immediately understand what we're talking about there. We were absolutely wrong in that. So we spent a lot of time at the food bank. As folks came through and we were talking with them, they immediately understood it. They wanted to share their stories of family members with asthma or with COPD, with breathing problems, and how poor some of the housing quality was, the air leakages, and the trucks driving by. And it's like there was no disconnect there for them. So that was really powerful. With property owners, we found we sort of have to segment those as well. And this is going to be unique depending on what city you're in. In Fort Collins, we actually have quite a few people that live in the community and own some rental housing. It might be 2, it might be 5, 10 houses, something like that. And they may hire somebody to manage them, they may manage it themselves, but it's a pretty large fraction of our rental housing is in folks like that. Turns out they're really invested in Fort Collins. They came back and said, yeah, we've really known for a long time that we need to put some money into our house. It's been really good for us from a real estate perspective. And we sort of put them on the spot. It's like, well, would you live there? So that was interesting. The other is that living in a, kind of a crappy rental house is an almost universal experience. We were talking with presidents of banks in Fort Collins, and they said, oh yeah, I lived in one of those houses in college or something like that. And so that universal experience was really powerful as a personal, it's like, you remember what that's like. And they're like, yeah, I do. And so that seemed to work really well. For the property managers and for some owners where maybe they're not invested in the community, all they want is the check. They don't even drive by their house because the checks are coming in. Having tenants that stay for more than one cycle is cash in their pocket. They don't lose that month's rent. They don't have to go in and paint it again. They don't have to do some of those kinds of things. And so as we said, if your house is a little bit better quality, you're more likely to have tenants that are going to stay there for multiple cycles of your leases. And they were like, oh, that's real. I can calculate that. And so it was really finding what works for each of them. And there may be some that are laggards that aren't going to participate. But we don't need everybody to join in to start with. But and so the other is that the ease of the process. I mentioned that before. No property manager wants to do an energy efficiency project because it's a hassle. They have to show up at the house to meet 3 different contractors and collect bids and go over there and make sure the work was done right. If we can take that from them and give them an assurance of that quality, they were extraordinarily interested in that. There's some qualities to the loan itself. So the EPIC loan is an assessment on your utility bill. It is not reported as debt. So if you're an investor or you're an owner of multiple properties and you're looking at your financial portfolio, having that as a not reportable debt like you might have if you went to the bank can be really important. And utility bills have extraordinary records of repayment. We have extraordinary powers as the utility. If you don't pay your bill for long enough, we will turn you off. So when it comes to the capital side, people, I'm kind of wandering off topic here, but that security of the utility bill component is really important as well. I mean, the municipal bonds would certainly, it doesn't really matter where you get, I mean, it matters where you get the capital in terms of the cost of the capital. And as a organization, we could have a really low cost of doing municipal bonds. That was not an approach that was supported at our leadership level. And in terms of making something that's really replicable in lots of places, doing it with a mix of our capital, again, market rate capital, grants, low interest loans. So we've got all of those in play right now so we can have an attractive package when we bring it finally to customers. And that is replicable in lots of different places around the country. Whether you have the ability to do municipal bonding should be one of those things on the list as well. So, yeah.
How does the process work if you happen to be a landlord and want to get engaged in this and don't want the hassle? Mm-hmm. How do you begin?
So you would, it starts kind of similar to any other energy efficiency project we have. You know, there's an energy, when you call up to request, say, I'm interested in doing energy, there's a screening process to find out whether you're more interested in this streamlined paths or the easy one. And that'll set you up with a certain set of providers that are capable of doing that. And they'll schedule the audit, and you'll get some questions about whether you're interested in the loan. Remember, we're not necessarily interested in loans is not our goal. Our goal is to fix up houses. So if people want to use this, or they want to use their own cash, they want to use a home equity loan, or they whatever, doesn't matter to me. There's lots of options out there. We just think this is, having this in our back pocket to offer that can apply to many people is going to get more projects done. And then you go through a process of scheduling and approving a scope of work. Once that scope of work is approved, we can even go as far as scheduling contractors to do the work. We'll be inserting a parallel process here where we'll be asking both the owner and the tenant if they're willing to participate in the research component with Colorado State, whether they're willing to have some air quality monitors put in the house, and they'll have the option of doing that. So the details of exactly some of those scripts we're working on. But it's not really any different from, other than making it, doing some of those steps for you that you might do if you decided to call 3 contractors and get estimates for insulating your attic. But we'll take care of it for you. Yeah. I guess Nick, and then we'll.
John, can you say more about the linkage between the health impacts you want to address and the energy efficiency work done on the house? You mentioned asthma, COPD. Is it primarily through air sealing that you think you'll address those, or is there additional work that will be done? What's the strongest linkages between those?
Yeah. The strongest linkages, we think, we have some evidence, and there's some evidence in different places, but it's really spotty. Although there was a study that just came out that was in northern Colorado. It didn't have any measurements associated with it, but it was a valid research that looked at leakage rates and self-reported incidences of asthma and various respiratory issues, and showed a pretty strong correlation with that. So we want to bring a measurement base to it. But if you think about if you have a leaky house, by the way, we did a couple of houses before we submitted our final application to Bloomberg. We were really excited about it. This wasn't just theoretical. We had actually done a couple of them. And the first rental house that we went in and fixed had a 70% reduction in air leakage. We had never seen one that large. It was like having the door open all the time in your house. And so it's either the air that is coming in is coming from a place where you don't want air coming from. Think of an old, musty, perhaps moldy, perhaps animals in it crawl space, and that's where your air is coming from because it's leaking through the house. So one is making sure that the air that does come in isn't coming through something that's nasty. that the amount of air isn't more than you need. And the other is, depending on where your house is, sometimes the outdoor air is dirtier. So we, again, talk to folks, if you're living next to a busy street, you've got a lot more particulates and air quality issues. Now there's also potential, and we've often heard from energy efficiency that, well, if you tighten up the house too much, you know, it's going to be polluted inside. And that gets to what are the behaviors of the folks and lifestyles of the people inside. So if you have a nice, tight house and you really like candles and you have 50 candles burning in your house, I can tell you the air quality is going to be really poor. Or cleaning products, or cooking and ventilation. So it is a complicated question. And so we're going to be trying to isolate the effects of the envelope measures in particular, and then what other things do we need to bring to that, whether it's education. You know, eventually our building codes, in my humble opinion, ought to all require balanced ventilation and things like that to ensure better air quality. So this is one step in that, but it is a really complicated equation or question. I agree. There's a question around, or comment around the long history we have in weatherization, and certainly there is many of the best practices we've learned over the years from weatherization and fixing up homes came out of the weatherization programs for the quality and standards. And your point about access to data on the results of those homes is really good as well. So. Yeah.
Now, I have a question, sort of a follow-up on that. Is if you have a complex, let's say someplace between 20 or between 10 and 20 more units, okay, and relatively built new, obviously the standards have improved from 10 or 15 years ago as to what they can build. But the question is, do you have a rating system for what's out there?
Yes, coming soon. So in terms of rating systems, so in Fort Collins, we brought a proposal to our city council in November, December, that they adopted that creates a building energy and water scoring system for commercial and multifamily buildings. So it doesn't cover single family, but larger multifamily and commercial buildings. And so it's going to phase in over about a 3-year period, starting with larger buildings and then going down to progressively smaller ones. So by 2022, I think we'll have about 1,600 of the largest commercial and multifamily properties in the community. It covers almost 50% of the electricity use. Will be required to track and report to the city their scores using an Energy Star tool, and then we'll make that information transparent and available to the public, so that if you're looking to lease an apartment or lease a commercial space, buy a building, you'll have that information available.
Is any of that available at this time?
No.
Okay.
But that's coming. So yeah,
Okay,
it's a good question.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, houses are complex animals with depending on their age and their history and the equipment, and so they can be when you get down to an individual house, it can be quite complicated to decide what to do. And so that's where our program, we hope, is providing the coaching and the expertise and the ability to ask those questions to help customers get through that.
And that's the Fort Collins Utilities we call?
Yes. I also want to mention, so we've talked about, so the EPIC loan program was created really to respond to our need for residential energy efficiency upgrades. And the Bloomberg Mayors Challenge component really puts the lens on rental properties. But as a utility, the EPIC loan program is available to all customers. Don't have to be rental. It can be your owner-occupied rental. Once we kick off the capital piece, you can use it for solar. We expect to add battery systems you could put. So all these could be, the loan is a tool that can be used for, regardless of the needs, going to vary over time, how that best can be appropriately leveraged. But so it's not just efficiency, but that's the lens we're putting on it for the Bloomberg project.
I know you're kind of stuck with what the capital you have to use right now.
Yeah.
Do you have kind of a maximum project amount that you're willing to do on-bill financing for?
For an individual project, it's $25,000. So yeah, we've been focusing on the efficiency projects right now. But again, we expect to sort of open the gates and really start marketing and promoting this in the next several months. And it's exciting to have the capital side be flexible enough to be that it can expand. And of course, they're going to want that. It's going to be successful for them if we're able to really roll on this.
And what are the loan terms? Like how many years are you allowing people to do this?
So you can go from 3 to 20 years. And there's a few measures that don't qualify for the 20 years. So the measure life has to make sense. The interest rates right now, and we sort of just went through a transition for 3 and 5 year terms, it's 3.49%. It's 3.99% for 7 and 10 years, and 4.49 for 15 or 20 years. Once we end up with a complete picture of what this initial capital stack is going to look like, given the external capital, the low interest loan from the Energy Office, the grant funds, we'll be re-looking at that. We're always going to try to keep that as low as we can to make it more attractive to customers and keep it in a competitive position there.
A simple question. It
Yes.
seems like you're with the split incentive, the owner is getting the loan, but the person paying the bills for utilities that you're going to tag onto is the renter. Is that the way it works or not?
Thank you for asking. That's like one of the most basic things I forgot to mention. So at Fort Collins Utilities, we're a multi-service utility. So we do electricity, water, wastewater, and stormwater, financing, soon to be broadband as well. Essentially, the owner has to put one of those services in their name. Typically, they'll put the water or the wastewater in their name, and a lot of rental properties do that anyway, or have that. And so we would put the loan payment on the owner's portion of the utility bill. So great question. Thank you for asking that. So.
Do you have any information on what percentage of the rentals in Fort Collins are college students?
We don't have great data on, so Fort Collins doesn't have any sort of rental registration or licensing of any kind. So we do know, we have some statistics that over 50% of Fort Collins residents are renters now. So less than 50% are homeowners. So you just take straight population, that's 75,000 people. And so some portion of those, obviously we've got a lot of students here, are either in campus housing or in rental housing. So it's a significant chunk, but we want to fix up those rental houses too. And certainly the issue of housing affordability is huge in Fort Collins right now. I wish I could say we could solve that with this, but it's not. And we learned in discussions with, again, lots and lots of residents, property managers, property owners, and we have this, it's true and it's a paradox at the same time, that we have this perception of it's totally driven by students, it's all around the campus, and yes, that is true, but that is not the complete picture of Fort Collins as a community. There's a tremendous amount of rental properties scattered throughout, and so it's the student sort of demographic and those serving that demographic is one segment of this overall spectrum of different properties and property managers. So we found a lot of work that can be done with those local owners who do care about the community and who are willing to sort of like, yes, so we're going to start there. We're not going to start with the hardest ones to convince that may never do it unless they come kicking and screaming and dragging them in. We're not going to start there. We're going to start, we hope to get there, but that's not the starting point. Yeah. More questions?
Does the city have any way of doing any kind of payback to the landlords in a tax kind of way or something?
That's an area where we're trying to understand better how different types of property owners look at that. Most of them don't seem to be thinking of it in a traditional, I'm going to invest $5,000 in this and I'm going to save $30 a month eventually in the utility bills because of that whole split incentive thing. So it's much more about how they treat it from a tax and write-off perspective, valuation of the property relates to which changes property taxes perhaps, and so we're trying to really understand that so we can provide better information that's tailored to them. But the traditional, like, what's the payback as a homeowner, even that we don't find to be the primary factor why owner-occupied homes are doing it. They're doing it because they want the comfort and the quality in their house. We've got tens of thousands of really crappy homes that were built in the 80s and 90s where people can't sleep in their bedrooms upstairs because it's miserably hot or miserably cold and there's no airflow up there, and it was a sign of the construction at the time. And most of the people that are fixing those up are like, I got a room back that it was uninhabitable for months out of the year. That has a lot more value to them than the energy savings they're going to get from their gas or their electricity bill.
I'm curious as to why you're putting the loan on the tenants, on the owner's side of the bill. If you really wanted to get the landlords on board, you put it on the electricity. Right?
You would think until you ask them.
Well, the owners have to.
Until you ask the landlord. If you ask the landlord if you're going to have a tenant pay a loan obligation that they are ultimately responsible for, they're like, absolutely not.
Really?
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense to me.
They can put that loan on their bill if they want to. We're not in the business of setting rent. They may adjust the rent to accommodate for that.
Could you make it optional? Whether they put it, what bill they put it on?
The other complicating factor that we wouldn't do as a risk management is essentially you're obligating a future customer to a charge that they had no. So it's not the tenant in there today. They may agree to that, but the next tenant suddenly.
But have the landlord make the decision.
But if we're putting a charge on a renter's utility bill that they had no part in, then we have to make sure that the landlord disclosed that in their lease agreement, and it just sort of tangles up.
You almost have to be
so
doing the administrative stuff and all the approvals every single time there was a new renter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. You'd have to have disclosures every time that turns over, and so from our perspective, we were like, I don't think we want to do that. And then when we talked to the owners, they were like, I don't want them to pay that bill either. So we were like, great. Yeah. Yes.
Can I have the last question? In that case, I've got to ask that the IPCC recently put out a document, and they're slow on their documents, but they said that we have to cut, as a nation, as a world, carbon dioxide into the atmosphere in half in the next 10 to 12 years. Does this program get anywhere close to helping that? It obviously helps, but boy, we got a long ways to go.
Yep. So earlier, I can't remember who was in the conversation. In my view, those challenges are about silver BBs. There are no silver bullets in this, and programs like this they do improve the efficiency, they do reduce carbon, they have can improve health outcomes, they can improve the quality of, so that we didn't really talk that much about the potential improvements in the quality of people's lives. So we talked to employers and the importance to them, their employees, of when they're sick, they don't show up to work, or their kids are sick, they don't show up to work. That affects their business. So housing quality eventually becomes an asset for our community, whether that is our living conditions, our healthcare costs, and our employment base. And so what an opportunity to sort of address all those at the same time. And oh, by the way, it saves carbon too.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much.